The playback processing section is really cool because it allows you to use some very specific monitoring plugins that I'll talk about in just a moment. But let's look at the orientation of the master section. As you'll remember, I said that everything flows from top to bottom. So the mastering plugins will get processed, then the output of that goes into the resampling engine, then into the master faders, then into the dithering section, and the dithering section is actually the last point in the master section where the processing will become part of the rendered files. Everything else that happens after the dithering plugins will not be rendered onto the audio files. That includes the playback processing section and the speaker configuration section. But let's talk about playback processing, and I'm going to recommend that you look into these two plugins that don't come with Wavelab, but I think are invaluable for mastering because they provide a true flat response for your studio monitors in your studio, because just because you have flat speakers doesn't mean that they're going to sound flat in your room. What you'll want to do is get one of these plugins as well as the microphone that the companies sell so that you can profile your own studio with your studio monitors. The first plugin that I like to use is from IK Multimedia, but you'll notice that there's no IK Multimedia section in here. And the other one is from SonarWorks, and it's not listed in here either. That's because we have to tell Wavelab to use those two plugins that are already installed on my computer here in the playback processing section. So let's come over to the File menu and click on that, and then go to the Preferences, and then click on Plugins. And then you have a choice of the General tab, but we want to go into the Organize tab. And then let's look for the first IK Multimedia program. So I'm going to open that folder, and here it is, ARC2. And you'll notice that it is an effect in the effects themselves, so I could use this on an output for rendering, but I certainly wouldn't want to do that because then I'll get really bizarre results when I listen to them and when the general public listens to them. Instead, what I want to do is make sure that they are enabled for the playback processing slots. So I'll just put a check right there in that box. Then I'll move to the SonarWorks plugins and do the same thing in that checkbox. Now, when I close the preferences and come to the playback processing section, when I right or control click, I see both the IK Multimedia and the SonarWorks sections, but I'm going to need to resize my monitor here just a little bit so that we can see the plugins that are in those folders. So I'll right or control click again. Here's ARC2, and it is profiled for my studio monitors, and it will not become part of the rendering process. Instead, it's just used for playback. And then the other one that I like to use is from SonarWorks, and it is reference 4. So the same sort of thing. I've used a microphone provided by each of those companies to measure the sound of my studio monitors in my mastering studio. And that way I know I get a true flat response, and that makes it much easier to master and know what the product is going to sound like after you've done the mastering and sent it out into the real world. So that's the playback processing section, and in the next section we're going to talk about rendering.